hello everybody. Good morning. My name is Sarah Aikenhead. This is my business partner Judith Painter, and we are Aikenhead Painter College Consulting, also known as AP College Consulting. And we're going to talk today about campus visits and interviews. And we'll have some material that's really focused at freshmen and sophomores, and we'll have other material that's focused at older students, at juniors and seniors. But hopefully there's something throughout the presentation that you can all learn from. So a little bit about us. We have professional memberships in WACAC, which is the Western Association of College Admissions Counselors. It's a handful. And also with HECA, which is a Higher Education Consultants Association. So we are in good standing with professionals in the college admissions industry, so to speak. We are not back doors or side doors into colleges in illegal ways in any way. We have, right? Singer, yes, we are not, we don't do business the way he does. We are not associated with him. And you know, a year ago we wouldn't have had to say that, but now it's sort of, people are aware of it, so.
Because I'm sure it's been going on.
Yeah. That we just don't even know, right? So you can see our undergraduate background. We are Peace Corps volunteers back in the day, and it's actually so we know each other, personally as well as professionally through a couple of those means. So, okay. So today we're going to talk about sort of the when and where. Why do you do a college visit? What's the point of the college visits? Getting ready for that visit, what kind of research you might want to do. Then we'll also have just a fair amount of time about interviews. So what's the point of a college or a visit? So even sophomores may already be getting stuff in the mail, right? Or emails, especially if you're juniors. You're getting all this onslaught, and it all looks beautiful, right? Green, big, impressive buildings, labs with lots of students doing work. But it's hard to differentiate, right? Because everything looks beautiful. One of the biggest values of going to that campus is actually kind of starting to see, okay, the truth, and what does it feel like on that campus? And especially if you're looking at a campus that may be geographically far from where we live, right? How does it feel different than Northern California? How does the weather perhaps different? Is it more humid? If you're going, looking, I want to go to Texas, right? Okay, go to Texas, right? See what that feels like. Get to know that college beyond what it tells you in that brochure, right? Or in its emails to you. That's starting to think about yourself as a student and what you want and where you will thrive academically, socially. Just imagine yourself. You get a chance when you're there to talk to people who are there, right? You can talk to the tour guide if they'd like you to ask them questions. You can ask questions of the admissions professional who's doing a presentation. You can park yourself on the quad and ask questions from passing students. Most students will actually be happy to give you a direction someplace or answer a question about what's going on in that library, or what is that, what does that billboard mean, right? There's a flyer up on a bulletin board somewhere. Is that interesting? Is there stuff there that you see that you might like to pursue? And then it's also an opportunity for you to make the college aware that you are interested. Public colleges, generally speaking, they don't care, right? There's so many students applying, and they're not looking at whether a student is dying to go there or not. You can represent that in your admission application, in your essays when the time comes. But private schools are looking for that match because they want to accept students who want to come. And one way that they can know that you want to come is if you come and visit them. This is really true for private schools that are close to where you live. So Santa Clara is a good example of that, right? If you're going to apply to Santa Clara, you need to go and visit. You need to go on a formal tour, sign in, register so they know you're there, because it's not okay. I mean, it's good if you drive through, but they don't know that you drove through or that you walked by if you're not registered somehow with them. So the smaller schools especially, they're looking for that, to know that you're interested in, and visiting is one way to do it. That said, don't feel you have to go and visit every small school that you apply to if they're far away and it's impossible for your family to get there, right? You don't have to do that.
Many times admissions officers are in the area.
Yeah, you can get to know them that way.
And you can link up with them very easily. And also the interview for some of the Ivy Leagues, while it's for both of you, it might be a little bit more for you than for them, because they have so many people applying, like public schools, that they rarely will consider the interview as high as so many other factors. They'll often do an alumni interview. Those are very popular too, which are good. But
Yeah.
I always say get an admissions officer if you can.
Yeah, so, okay. So freshman, sophomore years. Okay, so especially for your sophomores, I'm sure your junior year, hopefully junior's like, yes, check, did that, check, did that. So I would say take advantage of your family travels, right? You're going to see grandma, you're going to whatever, someplace else in the state. Bring a friend with you if it's a local thing. Schedule time to go, just to go to the city, bring a friend and stop by USF or San Francisco State. Visit a mix of schools. See the urban schools, see schools that are suburban. So in Northern California, we've got a bunch of different schools really close by, right? So you could see St. Mary's, which is sort of in a nice little enclave in Moraga, just outside of San Francisco, but you could also go into the city and see University of San Francisco. So they're both Catholic schools, but they give you a different feel for what being in a really urban school is like versus being someplace a little more secluded and still close to urban proximity. You can see Davis, which is obviously a great big UC campus, and get a feel for what does a 30,000 student campus feel like. You can also then go see San Francisco State to get a more urban but still public school. So you can visit a bunch of different schools. You can go down to UOP in Stockton. That's a beautiful little public school, private school, excuse me, and see what that feels like as well. What does it feel like to be on a campus of a school like that? I would say, generally speaking, at this age, you don't really need to do the formal tours unless you're somewhere where you're not going to get back to. So if you happen to be on a family trip to the East Coast, go ahead and sign up. Take the tour of, Yale if you're in New Haven, say, and that you really want to see what does an Ivy League campus feel like, right? If you can visit when schools are in session, rather than summer or breaks, that's ideal. It's not always possible, and especially with summer in particular, there'll still be stuff going on the campus. Generally speaking, a lot of schools offer summer sessions, so there'll still be some life on the campus, but it's not going to quite feel the same. And then there are many schools have virtual tour links on their websites. And so those are worth doing too. And sometimes the virtual tours will show you, like they're not high quality necessarily. Sometimes they're just like students with cameras and they're like showing you, here's my dorm room, and here's like, they're kind of more personal in some ways. And it can kind of be a way to see a part of the college that you don't see on a formal tour. And you get a little bit of a student perspective that you might not get quite as much of. So I like those. And then, look in your backyard, as we said, there's a bunch of stuff you can do right here in Northern California. The state schools as well as privates. So, okay. Okay, we're gonna switch and let Judy talk.
So once you are a junior or a senior, then things get a little bit more serious regarding whether you want to go on a tour and have that interview. I do say, though, that I think campus tours are essential for you to decide in the end what school you want to go to. But I know that kids have a lot of obligations, and sometimes it's hard to squeeze that in before the deadline. So I always say, if you can't see the tour before you apply, see it after. You got till May. You have till May. I know lots of people who didn't see anything before they applied. And then in the spring, when the weather was spring, winter, when maybe it was a little bit more realistic, especially if they were applying back east, they went to visit all the schools that they were accepted to. But they were able to do admissions or alumni interviews and connect with the school in other ways without flying out there if it was a flying thing. But we do suggest, whether you're having an alumni or in-house admissions person come to you or you're going to them, is to research the school before you go. Know what you are getting into. It will mean so much more for you while you're on the tour that you can go, I read in the FIS guide, which we totally recommend, that you have a dynamite political science department with what, blah, 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 blah. Then you can ask about that. Also go to the website, because the website will have the very latest and the greatest. Niche.com is something that we recommend, but not as much as using a guide or the website. I also have a few out here, pamphlets of, I don't know if you've heard of these, colleges that change lives. Sarah and I are big fans of these schools. We try and see them whenever we go out looking at schools. We try and see at least 25 to 50 schools a year. These are always high on the list. And I have 4 of them.
You guys are here. You can have those 4. Yeah.
So here.
And they have a great website also.
And they do have a great website. Good. Perfect. Another great thing to do while you're on campus is if you know you're going to be in theater, is to talk to the theater department head. If you know you want to go into neuroscience, talk to the biology, chemistry, or if they have a neuroscience department. So they will accommodate you if you come to the school. They'll try and set up either the department head or a professor or maybe even a student who is studying that same field. And that's so enlightening. If you decide to take a road trip where you're going to be gone for a week, a lot of people do it over spring break or right after school gets out in June or over Thanksgiving, whatever, Christmas, winter. It's a great thing. It should be a lot of fun. It should be a bonding time. And you should make it very stress-free. And we always say one way to do that is do not schedule more than 2 schools a day, and they should not be more than 2 hours apart if you're driving. There's also a website that will map it out for you called, I don't know, Get Me to the Campus or something like that. Amazing. They'll tell you where to sleep and where to eat, but I feel maybe that's overdone. But that road trip is, kind of a rite of passage for some people. Try and eat on campus if you can. Picture yourself in that dining hall. And if you can't, go to the town and check out the town where this student might be living for 4 years. Is it enough? Is it too much? As I said, try not to spend too much time, like these long distances in between. You'll have an information session at one school at the earliest at 9 and at the latest at 3. So figure that out if you want to go do an information session and a tour. I always suggest traveling at night so you're there, at the next school that morning. And then you have a 2-hour trip and then traveling at night again. So it's a little less rushed in the morning. Okay, next slide. Timing is everything. Some of these schools, the tours and interview times fill up. Not all, some. So I say a month in advance. You're probably good. Reserve it online. If you want to do a department or something special, definitely do that ahead of time. You could also consider spending the night. Sometimes they do that. I think freshman and sophomore is a little young, but senior, it's good. A lot of schools have open houses where they pull out all the stops. And it might even be for students who have been accepted. But I think you could wander on.
Right, and so I would say, the fall of junior or senior year is a good time for those open houses in particular. Like St. Mary's has one coming up at the end of October.
Right, the open houses for that kind of thing are in the fall, and the accepted students are in the spring. Okay, so I think everything else we've covered, sort of. It's the same for freshman and sophomore. Allow yourself time. I always suggest you talk to as many people. I have the student talk to as many people randomly, which often they are shy to do. So you could take the lead and go up to a random student that happens to be in the geology department that your student is interested in and say, so tell me, how do you find this geology department? What's your favorite class? Do you have any internships? Why did you come here? Questions like this. I can tell you a personal story. My daughter was is very political, and she really wanted to go to a school that had a lot of activism. So we went to this one school on the East Coast, small school, and she asked everybody, in the library, in the gym, on the street, and everybody had the same answer, interestingly, which is, I haven't really thought about that. So she crossed that school right off her list. It was a good test.
And building on that, one of the values of visiting a bunch of different schools is also for you as a student, like the first time's a little overwhelming, especially sometimes if you're younger, but you get used to it. And you may not want to ask anybody anything that first visit, but by the third visit, you're like, okay, I've heard this at these 3 schools. I want to know more, and you're more emboldened. You have more confidence to go ahead and ask the tour guide that question. Ask the students, studying, a question.
There is the danger, if you're going to see 8 schools in 4 days, of them starting to blur. Yeah. Especially if you're going to see similar schools, because you've already narrowed it down that my son or daughter wants a Big Ten school, or they want a small liberal arts school. They start to blur. So I suggest kind of doing a debrief right after, and just seeing what you remember. Like, what are the highlights? And just make a note, keep a little notebook. What are the highlights? What did I really like? What did I not really like? What am I still wondering about? And then you can, follow up on that. I had a brother who kept everything in a matrix and Excel spreadsheet, and it worked for him. So if it works for you, his son had a thing, how were they cute girls? He had everything.
But it's valid. You're going to be living there for 4 years. If that's important to you, then, be honest with yourself, right?
It worked for him. I think actually they did that just to make fun of my brother.
Maybe. And my daughter, she watched the other students, and she was like, do they look happy? Are they walking? Are they all alone? Or are they walking in pairs and groups? So she was kind of looking out for what's that social dynamic like on that campus, because to her that was something that she knew was going to be important for her in a decision, right? Everyone's going to have their thing, right? So whatever what are they wearing, or is it all designer, right? Everyone's going to have their thing. So
next slide. It's a really common trap that you go to a school that the parent or the parent might love, or maybe you both hate it. But all of that is really reflective, not of the school, but of the tour guide, who's always a student, usually a pretty good student. They know how to walk backwards. They know all these stats. They're usually very enthusiastic about the school. And they are an excellent resource if they have been well trained, which I've run into a few that have not been. But generally, they are good. But it is key not to let that be an overwhelming factor in your decision. Oh, in the end, I just loved the tour guide at this place. You can go back and get a different tour guide, and things are going to be different. So just, it's part of the picture. Don't let that be a big factor in your final judgment of that school. Very often, there are a lot of people who show up for these information sessions, and then they split them up into different tours. If you're comfortable with it, I always say go with different tour guides, the parent and the student, because then you do get those 2 different viewpoints. Usually, there might be a tour guide that somebody is interested in, Oh yes, that person is doing international relations. I'm going to go with that. That person is an athlete. I'm going to go with that. But go with different people. I always suggest to look at the bulletin boards, see what's going on. Are there activities and sessions that are going to be of interest to the student? Does it look like there is something going on? And a few key places to check out while you're on the tour. I think the dining hall is essential. All the food now tends to be really great, but kind of the vibe of the dining hall is different. There's usually a quad or a student lounge area. And the library. Even though libraries, in a way, are all the same, what's different is their hours, their quiet levels. Most schools now have progressively quieter halls. Top is the pin drop. And their access to the stacks in terms of what they have on campus and what their network is like. And I would verify that with other students. Oh yeah, does their network really work? Some to verify. Yeah, so can you picture yourself there in the end?
Yeah, it's a nice way to also compare the same element across multiple schools.
Yeah.
right? The quad or the dining
You
hall.
want to make that
especially.
matrix.
Yeah.
Library.
Yeah, it was a 1 through 10 if you're a numbers person, or it was an A, and, happy face, sad face if you're a more visual type of person. So.
Okay, so interviews. There are 2 types of interviews, and you should find out what the school is doing before you go there. It shouldn't change your approach that much, but it might make you more or less at ease. There's evaluative versus informational, and then there's those who are recommended or required versus optional. And then, of course, you have honor off campus. But what I'm going to really focus on is the evaluative versus informational. Evaluative means you will probably most definitely meet with an admissions officer. And that admissions officer will have questions for you and will be taking notes. And those notes will be going into your file. And they will note, Sally came for an interview. I thought she showed promise in these areas. She, I think would fit in well in our community, blah, 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 blah. The informational ones, they will probably take notes. Sally came, we had an interview, boop, boop, that's it. So one is playing into the admissions student decision. One is just more noting that they came, probably for greater marketing or whatever informational purposes. So if it's recommended, you go. If it's optional, I say still go, if you can. Or and if you can't, call them and say, I live in Sacramento. Are there any regional people out here? And believe me, there is somebody. There's always somebody. And on campus versus off campus, obviously. Sometimes they do a Zoom video. That's getting more popular. If you can't go to the campus, like I said, you can always go later. But you should never go except to school without seeing the campus. I would put that down as a rule of thumb. So, the benefits to an interview are mainly that I think there are great benefits to the student because they get to ask all the questions they can't find on the website. There are probably specific questions they have. And those are the questions you want to shine during the interview. And so you want to ask more, esoteric questions. What would you say is the tenor of the school in this department regarding X? So very specific questions. You can ask broad questions if you want, but you need to be able to show that you've already done your research. You already know about this, but you're just doing a follow-up. You also need to be prepared. The student should be prepared to talk about themselves, which many students feel a little bit hesitant to do or shy, or they clutch, That would have been me. So I say, this is not a test. You can bring in your resume. Some people bring their resume. I always say, bring in an index card. And on one side, write down all the things you want that admissions officer to know about you. I had my own business walking dogs for 3 years. I was, captain of the cheer squad. I am an honor student. That they'll probably know anyway. Usually it's less academic and more activity or, I have one student, I take care of my 3 brothers and sisters because my parents are no longer available to me for various reasons. So these are the things that, it's important things that you're going to want the admissions officer to know. So if you're worried that you're going to forget one, write them all down and bring it in. And on the other side of that same index card, I say, write down all your questions, those esoteric questions you've thought about. It doesn't have to be something that you have to sit there and do on the fly. You can come prepared. Believe me, these admissions officers have done this thousands of times. They are prepared. So in terms of attire, you do not have to dress like this necessarily. But maybe a step up from that. No, you look good. But clean and neat. Clean and neat, I always say.
So building on attire, maybe for gentlemen, No baseball hats when you're inside, no hats at all indoors, and certainly not a hat from another school, right? Or a sweatshirt from another school. Just like think, oh right, I'm here. Even though I love this other school, you know, I'm gonna take that off.
This is like a job interview where you don't need a suit. You can wear jeans.
Yeah.
Jeans and a shirt, you know. Just look clean and neat.
Clean and neat. Yeah, no, not too much skin, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So. Some people do mock interviews, they practice.
Yeah.
If that would make the student more comfortable, then that's a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And the other is in addition to a mock interview, if you have several different schools and one's like super important to you, maybe don't do that one first. Right? Maybe try to schedule a school that offers an interview, but you're still pretty confident you're going to get in because you're a strong student for that school.
Or you don't care if you get in.
Or you don't care, but then you probably shouldn't be applying. But so, and use that as your practice. You will be, as a student, you know, the person, the admissions officer will come, they'll say hi, and you'll go off to a different room. Your parents will be coming with you 90% of the time. Your parents are going to stay back and hang out in the lounge with all the other parents. And there's going to be all these people coming and going. It's a little, you know, it's busy. And then maybe they will invite, at the end of the interview, they might invite parents in, you know, to say hello, or they'll bring you back, and that might be an opportunity for a parent to ask a single question, you know, to that interviewer. But this is not the chance for the parents to grill the admissions about what are the chances of my child getting in, or anything like that. Just, you know, keep it professional and think ahead. Okay, what is the question I really want to understand about the school? You know, that would be appropriate to ask an admissions officer.
And after you're done, they're going to write to you via email. Many of them will write to you a thank you handwritten note if it's a small enough school. And you should respond in kind. I would say try and just get a nice piece of stationery and pop it in the mail. Sometimes I say, you know, it never happens, but I would say do it during that debrief time. You know, write it right then, and then it's done. You can, boom. But that rarely happens, so that's a high bar, because like the students are hungry and they're, you know, they want to do something else besides sit down there and write a thank you note. So that's a hard thing to do. But at some point, you should write one, because for the smaller schools especially, you know, that's who do evaluative interviews. That goes into the file. Oh, look, they wrote a thank you note. Let's put that in the file. Look, it's well written and grammar is correct and blah, blah, blah. And then you'll get a bunch of other communications, which I say you should try and respond to if it warrants that. If it's totally informational, you know, you don't have to. But if you're saying, hey, you know, if the admissions officer is saying, hey, you know what, after our conversation, I thought you should really look at this scholarship. Well, you know, that's certainly warranted. Even if you're not interested in that scholarship, you should at least, you know,
thanks.
acknowledge that it's been received and thank you. Okay, last slide. So we end with this is that, you know, to try and keep things in perspective. We actually had this slide before Varsity Blue, I want you to know. This is not a race, this is not a competition, and we are looking for the school that is the best fit for your student, not the one that ranks highest in US News and World Report, which I will not recommend as a source to research schools with, because it is generally reviled among advisors like us, because the numbers are so manipulated, and the way they, you know, like if you decide to go test optional, that lowers you in your ranking. That means you become more accessible. And, you know, the diversity goes up, your ranking goes down. So, and all the rankings are dependent on some other president's ranking of the school that they may or may not really be familiar with. So it's not a good source, I would say, not a good source. So you're looking at a school that you can thrive, your student can thrive at, and be assured there's probably more than one of those out there. So this is it should be a really interesting, exciting time, and not a stressful time. It will be a busy time though, for sure. And I think Sarah always said that the college application process your senior year is like an additional class. that fall semester. And that's how you should think of it. It is an additional class. There's a lot of homework, there's a lot of writing, there can be some travel. And so when you're choosing your senior year classes, consider that. If you are applying to all schools that don't require writing, there's a lot of schools out there that don't require an essay or recommendations, and it would be more of an issue of looking at the campus and the programs and the financial issues, then it will be less busy, but it will still be busy. So do you have any questions for us? Oh, last slide. We do have one more slide. So here, sir, I'll let you cover that.
Okay, I'll cover this. I was going to make a point, though. First, I was going to build on what Judy had said about the busyness or the. So one thing that as a junior, what you're doing, I mean, the amount of work for the college application process, sort of from soup to nuts, is the same thing. And if you start, August of your senior year, it's the same amount of work. You're just scrunching it into 3 or 4 months. If you can start now with a testing strategy, with a visit plan, with thinking about a list of schools that you might be interested in, maybe in the summer you're able to get started on essays. You're just giving yourself more time to do the same amount of work, and it takes pressure off your senior year because you're just spreading out that work a little bit. Sophomores, I wouldn't even think about it, right? You don't have to think about the application stuff at all. You just work, you figure out what you love to do, you get good grades, you do your extracurriculars, you have fun, and then when your parents take you on vacation, you go see a college, right? It's easier. But junior year and on is when you want to actually sort of be more deliberate in how you use your time. So one of our services, we work primarily one-on-one with students, but we also offer workshops. So this is a way if you are someone who likes to do stuff with your friends. Like everyone get together, you spend 3 hours, you've all got your laptops out, we're going to go through and you're going to fill out the whole Common App. Not the personal statement necessarily, but you're going to get all of the other stuff done. Good, done, check it off list. It's a nice way to get through some stuff that maybe is harder to prioritize and sit down and take the time to do it. And so we can work with students in small groups to do those kinds of workshops tailored to what that group of 3 or 4 kids needs.